Hey, y'all, you got Doug Gore here with the Stonewash Academy. Today, we're going to be talking to three different people that already fly drones currently, wash drones. Been doing it for, I think, 2.5 years or plus minus somewhere in there. We'll let them say that. Start off with a brief introduction. But Brandon, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name's Brandon. I've been doing drone cleaning for about 2 years now. This is my second full year really into it. I kind of got started late in the season, my first year, so didn't get much experience there. But it's been a long learning journey, and hopefully cover some of the trials and tribulations of drone cleaning here today.
Sounds good. Ryan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Ryan Godwin, owner of Godwin Cleaning Services, and we've been flying drones almost since inception. Me and Mr. Chris Creekmore over there. We were originally a cleaning company that adopted drones into our business early on because we just felt like it was the future. So we've done it all.
And ready to do more.
Yeah,
Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, my name's Chris. I come from the restaurant background and a small drone background. I found a niche cleaning drones back in summer of 2021. Had no experience washing, but I knew I wanted to fly something different. It wasn't saturated, so I found these washing drones, and I've really formed a nice niche since then. It's been a lot of fun learning and having conversations like this.
Yeah. Well, and today I think we have several different goals, but one of the things really is about safety, and I think we want to put out to everybody, making sure we cover several different aspects of the safety. But let's start off a little bit about the capabilities and the I don't want to say the downfalls of the drones, but maybe what the drones can do, what they can't do, versus what they should do and what they should not do, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there on how high the drones can go, on these jobs that they can do, even maybe even get into a little bit about water towers. I've heard lots of things where people are saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do all these water towers, and sometimes yes and sometimes no. So what are y'all's general thoughts on the capabilities or the downfalls of the drones from that aspect around? Brandon, go for it. We can kind of go around there so we don't step on it.
Yeah. Well, from my experience, I've only done a few water towers up here. And they're rather small, so the altitude on them here is, they're sub 100 foot. I know there's a lot more out there that are bigger. My experience with them is they, quite honestly, are probably the hardest thing to clean. You have a lot of different factors with those. What people don't really understand is the difference between flying one of these drones that we utilize and flying a drone over a field. You don't have to deal with the wind shear and things like that. There's a lot of turbulence involved, and as you go up in altitude, that hose can cause some issues. And some of the towers have cellular antennas on them too, so that can sometimes cause some issues with your signals.
Yeah, you also bring up a great point when you're thinking about the hose, and that is, as that hose is going along, your drone's moving along. If there's not somebody paying attention, or if you're not paying attention, and that hose grabs onto anything, it grabs onto a hose spigot, or whatever, it can break that. It can, cause an issue with the drone, I would imagine. So, what are your thoughts on all this, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that water towers are in elevated tank structures, they're more of a challenge just because of the hostile environment they are. A lot of these drones work on magnetic compasses and with GPS and all that. And once you start putting a drone around a lot of metal, the compass thinks, like, for example, the compass thinks the metal is due north. It is what pulls it. So you could be facing a different way and it's pulling that way. So it's making the drone not understand where it's at in the world. As far as the cleaning of it goes, they're pretty straightforward. It's just getting the drones to fly with the wind shear, like Brandon said, with the compass problems that can come about, the antenna interference. Some of them have high power voltage going to it to run the antennas, and dealing with that electromagnetic field in there. Some of them are fenced in, so it's tight working quarters, trees around them. So yeah, I mean they're probably one of the most challenging smaller structures. Like if they're sub 100, they're challenging. If they're above that, that's its own challenge. Lollipops are good. Round, typical your cylinders are good. When you get to the spider leg tanks or the ones with multiple legs holding it up, they're pretty difficult to navigate, just about impossible, because you can't go in and under the tower to clean because of magnetic interference and or satellite loss once you go under the tower. So it's a give and take. They're tough, but doable in the right hands.
What are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, everything Ryan said, Brandon said, a lot of factors to consider just when flying in general. And around curved structures, in my experience, can be very difficult and sometimes literally impossible to even get a drone close enough to spray.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is if you have a tower, it's wide open, which I've done towers and tanks wide open, over 100 feet tall, and plenty wide enough, you think the wind would be blocking it on one side. However, when the wind comes in, let's say from the north, and you're trying to spray from the south, and you're 115 feet in the air, that wind is coming in and it's double digits, 10 or 12, 13 more miles an hour. It's going to converge on the back side of the tank where you're at. And it creates this almost like invisible barrier that you literally can't even fly into. It becomes really dangerous. The drone starts backing, going in and out, and the spray is going all crazy. It's very challenging, and I've had to put my drone down in the situation to just come back another day and fly. So wind is the biggest enemy. A lot of people kind of overthink that aspect and don't really consider it to be that much of an issue. But A, we don't want bleach and chemicals going everywhere, and B, we want to save those chemicals in the same breath. And frankly, overspray can be a big liability and risk when we're flying, especially in urban environments. But and not all these structures are always in the most remote locations. Sometimes it might be near a hiking trail or a sidewalk or whatever the case may be. Still don't want to get chemicals on somebody walking by or an employee of the property you're working at. But I would say for elevated water tanks, the wind is always the biggest, most dangerous thing to look out for, in my opinion.
So when talking about heights, because I know you said 100 feet or something to that nature, one of the things that I like to talk about as well is that, when you start looking at, and let's go back to this whole 400-foot thing, right? So at 400 feet, can you really see what you're doing to begin with? So to me, I think a lot of people are being somewhat unrealistic when the phone call is about the height of how high can these drones go. Chris, give me your thoughts on how high a drone could go or should go, kind of a thing.
So yeah, we have the FAA regulations to follow and abide by. 400-foot AGL, above ground limit, is the rule everyone knows, right? Okay, cool. But these drones are much larger, much more powerful, much more difficult to control sometimes. Now, 400 feet, it's a spec, even the size of these, given their 3-6 foot wingspan. At 300 feet, it's still hard to see. At 200 feet, it's a tiny speck. And I've flown these as high as about 200 feet. And yeah, they're very hard to control. Wind is crazy up there. You don't know what's going on. It's bouncing all over the place. It's just different. And then you come down to 100 feet, you can see it clear as day. You have a good VO next to you. At 200 feet, you got to start incorporating another spotter drone, someone sitting next to you, looking at the screen. It's a very, very tedious operation at that point. And plus, the pumps that we use are only effective for so much hose,
right,
before they lose their distance too. So,
and that's another good point. Ryan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just echo what Chris says. I mean, like the 400-foot thing, you really can't see it for one or get the accurate distance in spraying.
Mhm.
So if you're having to get closer to the building to even touch it with what you're spraying, and you couple that with can't see, it's just a recipe for disaster. I
Mhm.
think the bread and butter for these drones are in that 100 to 130-foot mark. That's what I have found. Well, Chris and I have both flown on sites together at 200 foot. We did a hospital, and man, when we're sitting down there flying up that high, we're right at the limit of the drone, and it gets difficult because it's like it's not windy down here like he's talking, and you get that wind shear off the side of that hospital that high up. I mean, your wind
Mhm.
speeds pick up the higher you go. I mean, that's a traditional aviation thing. I mean, like it's science. I mean, that's what happens.
Mhm.
So people don't think that 30 foot off the ground, 40 foot off the ground, 100 foot off the ground, the wind changes that dramatically, but it
And very
does.
much so does. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree with Chris.
Any added thoughts to that, Brandon?
No, the same thing. They touch base really good on all that stuff. One thing people don't take into consideration is turbulence.
Mhm.
Where it comes from, what causes it. Similar situation I had. I was doing not a hotel, a hospital, and on top of the hospital, the roof had uh, different things mounted on it. You had some equipment mounted on there. There was rocks, and then there was a black rubber roof membrane, and then there was solar panels on there. And in those warm days, if you don't understand how turbulence works and how it's going to affect these drones, you start adding weight, you get up to 80, 100, 120 feet, and then you're flying over that stuff with all of that weight suspended in that hose.
And the
Uh,
heat rising off.
the heat rising off, and then just flying over those different surfaces will create a lot of turbulence. It'll affect things like battery management, battery life. So you have to take that into consideration. Uh, there's a lot more to cleaning with these drones than just grabbing the remote and spraying some bleach on the side of a building. So those are some things that aren't talked about enough. So
And that
things
that's
to
kind
keep
of
in
the
mind.
purpose of this, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Exactly. So, Ryan, tell me a little bit about the type of equipment that you feel is the right type of equipment to use for the drone. Because one of the things that we look at, again, going back to this whole height thing, right? It doesn't do you any good. Let's say you can see the drone perfect at 300 feet,
Yeah.
right? Which we know you can't. You still can't get your like you're talking earlier about getting your solution up there, getting the pump.
Yeah.
So what type of pumping system are you using, or what do you think is the right hose? Because again,
Yeah.
the weight of the hose, all of that matters.
Oh yeah. Weight of hose matters. The pump matters. It all matters. It's the ecosystem, right? It's the
Mhm.
ecosystem. We have
Oh,
we have done. We flipped. We have done so many tests with having a network of drone pilots have been doing it for a while. Like Chris and I have talked a good bit, tested different things out. I believe in the soft wash side of it. I believe that a 3/8 inch hose um, is the way to go. A lot of people
Right.
run half-inch, 3/8 inch hose. I run Flexzilla hose, but it busts all the time, right? You have all these because it just doesn't have the tensile strength. So I know Chris is flying this ag hose, Brandon's flying this ag hose. We've got the ag hose now, and it's a little bit heavier than the Flexzilla, but not so much that it affects anything. So with your hose, I think a 3/8 hose. I think a gas powered roof pump. We've tried 12 volts, just don't get it up there.
Right.
24 volts, they're same kind of thing because the head pressure, right? You need that constant head pressure to push, and these electric pumps just don't do it. Booster pumps work okay, but there's a little more. It is lacking just that little bit that's right behind that gas powered pump is constantly shoving it up there.
Gotcha.
Um, I've had a conversation with a bunch of drone or a few drone owners that run a booster, and they're really considering switching or building out a specific pump just for the drone that's a AR-45 or a P40. Is kind of the conversation.
What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I've flown drones for other people that have 12-volt systems, and I get to the job site, and they assured me that, oh yeah, our system will work, blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, I trust you. Get there, 12-volt system, we fly up 50, 60 feet, and we barely have a stream going 10 feet. So um, can you realistically clean with that? No, you can't, because your battery life is going to, I mean, your battery life compared to your flow rate is just not, doesn't make sense mathematically. So like, you're just not going to be effective. You can only go up so high. You can only spray out so much. You can only fight and penetrate through the wind so much. The gas powered pumps are really the only option. And I know Brandon has a cool little system from Softwash Systems. Boom, there's a shout out. But he runs a high pressure, low volume pump, which he can talk more on, which I'm actually now looking into. That makes more sense for like these more densely populated areas in cities where we don't need 12 gallons a minute. We don't need 10 gallons a minute. We just need to get it on the building, let it sit, and not have as much overspray. And these drones can also, there's also a misconception about the amount of pressure they can handle. A lot of guys go, oh, well, can you hook that up to a 3,500 or 4,000 PSI machine? Sure. Just have the right hose, have the right tip on there. And if you can get a soft start system like a K7, you're good to go. I mean, I hook mine up to my 10 gallon a minute, 3,500 PSI machine all the time for rinsing or downstream bleach when I need to. So it's just a matter of the hoses, the tips, just the combination of everything that you have to do it properly and safely.
So you do downstream with your drone?
Yeah, I've done it with 300 feet of hose, flying 100 feet in the air, shooting 60 feet out with bleach.
Gotcha. And Ryan's kicking in and out on us there. So battery life, battery management. How do you feel about that, or what's realistic in these batteries and these things that you're typically finding?
Brandon?
Go ahead, Ryan. We'll start there with you.
Okay.
Did you catch that?
So back. Yeah. I had a call come in and kind of kicked me out for half a second. But
yeah, no problem.
So battery life, battery management. I think that's a really important component to this thing, right? Because battery life and battery management, how you take care of your batteries really dictate how long they're good for. I mean, charging, storing, the whole 9 yards. I mean, because when you're in the drone, you're going to almost deplete them, right? When you're flying.
Right.
But having a good system as far as depleting them, letting that set cool a little, next setup, when that set that was on cools, you put that on the charger, let it do its thing, and you get that free flow or that flowing rotation of battery while you're on site is the most important thing to keep you running and to keep your batteries right. Also, you want to run them in pairs is what I do all the time. I don't mix match them because each flight has a different pull on the sets. So you want to kind of keep them the same as much as possible. And with that being said, when you're done for the day and you're not going to fly tomorrow or it's going to be a week before you fly, you really need to discharge the batteries if you're going to store them. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is it's just going to sit there and degrade the battery being fully charged. Now, some drone companies have smart batteries, that kind of do it themselves, like a DJI would. But the best practice to get into, just to have a fail safe, is to discharge them and get in that habit.
So, how many batteries do you have on it? If you're going to run a full day, and let's assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, but let's just say that you're going to run an 8-hour day. Right. How many battery sets do you have, and how many chargers do you have at that job site?
Yeah. So right now we currently have 2 chargers, and we have 4 sets of batteries with the Apelix drone. Ideally, we're fixing to purchase a few more sets. I think the ideal is about 6 sets of batteries for the Apelix platform. When we were flying Lucid, the ideal set was 8 to 10. Just because, but they've done some improvements on batteries and all this stuff. So I can't speak to what their current model is, but yeah, 6 sets, 6 to 8 to 10 sets roughly just across the board would be it. And then chargers at 2 is preferred, but a lot of times those are a little extra money, and if you're going to make the investment, I would suggest having 2 chargers.
Absolutely. And Brandon, I think that's about what you had said on our last interview, is that you run, I think you said six or 8 sets of batteries and 2 chargers. Is that correct?
Yeah, for my Lucid, I have 8 sets, 2 chargers. That's I don't have the experience with the Apelix when it comes to long-term projects yet, so that'll be something I play with. When I was working with Ryan on that last project, we were kind of talking about that stuff too. So that is something I'll be working with to see. But I tell you what, one of the things that we didn't really touch on is, especially starting out, when somebody goes and gets a drone, they might have this misconception that they're just going to go buy a drone and hook it up to their pressure washer and downstream stuff out of the back of their Honda Civic or station wagon and go to town cleaning stuff. It's a full operation, just like any other commercial cleaning project. It's going to take more people. Mm-hmm. It's not something one guy can just pick up and do, especially big jobs. Mm-hmm. If you're doing a residential house, things like that, something small projects, sure, you could get away with doing this stuff on your own. But, I basically have one person dedicated to batteries on large scale projects.
That's all they do.
Yep.
Chris, what are your thoughts on there?
Battery management's pretty simple. Just be aware of the temperature, of your environments. Don't let them get too hot or too cold. You don't want to charge them when they're warm or too cold. It can damage the cells. Storage, be mindful of where you're storing them. When the winter comes, bring them inside. If you're cold, they're cold, But no, for real, you just got to be careful about how they're stored, how they're charged, how long they are charged for. My rules are very simple. I don't keep them charged for weeks at a time. I charge them a couple of days ahead of a job, and then I do my job, and then I let them all just sit there depleted. I have 6 sets and 1 charger for the Apelix, and I find that's the absolute sweet spot in my opinion. Mm-hmm. You can fly all day, have a charger set up, you're good. Don't have to worry about a thing. When I had my Lucid, I had 12 sets of batteries and 2 chargers, so I was good on that older platform. And then
the batteries
kind of what Brandon. What's that?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying to what Brandon was saying. It's the misconception about people thinking they can just get a drone and hook it up to their 5-gallon or 6-gallon a minute pressure washer and start doing these big projects is just wildly inaccurate. There's a lot more that goes on to these jobs. Plus, not to mention the safety aspect when you get involved with them as well.
Mm-hmm. What's the biggest safety misconception that you think you've seen or heard out there, Brandon?
Well, without saying which manufacturer it is, there was a commercial that they put out that this old lady basically grabbed a remote in the middle of the field and started flying a drone. That part, sure, I can hand the remote to anybody that's never flown a drone before and say that 98% of the time it's going to be safe for them to go up and down and go back and forth. But again, like all of the things that we mentioned earlier about the wind, turbulence, how do I put it? Well, tell you what, we're operating an unmanned aerial vehicle in federal airways. Mm-hmm. We're operating an aircraft. I got some experience with the ag drones, and they're much larger. Like tip to tip on the propellers on some of these ag drones are as big as my Apelix. They're massive. They're going to be affected by little bits of wind. So I think that's a huge safety misconception that people might have out there, that they're actually safe. You know, we touched base a little bit on this in the last talk. In the ag world, your drone crashes. It crashes in the middle of a field. A couple of corn stalks are busted off. You lose a couple corn cobs. You lose some soybeans. No big deal, right? You just pick up the drone and fix it. With what we are doing, we are moving this drone technology and those inherent risks into urban environments. And we have to learn how to mitigate the safety concerns to the public. You know, I've done quite a bit of work down in like the Madison and Milwaukee and Chicago areas lately. People don't pay attention. They will walk right underneath your hose, walk right through barricades, things like that. You know, and connectivity issues create another safety factor in some of these more urban areas. We need to make sure that people are sure of what their drones are capable of. The connection issues that some of us have had in the past, hopefully we've kind of gotten through that. But that creates a huge safety concern for myself. And not only that, and a huge insurance liability. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I've had a couple of drones just fall right out of the sky, and it is absolutely terrifying to watch it come down and have absolutely no control over where it's going.
Right. That would be horrifying.
So that's a huge safety misconception that I don't think the manufacturers put out there enough. Mm-hmm. They need to understand that it's still an aircraft.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what are your thoughts on the biggest safety misconceptions?
Can you guys see me? My camera shows I'm frozen.
Yeah, your camera's frozen. We can see the camera, but we don't. You're not moving on it.
We can hear.
Should I leave and come back?
You can. Let's go. So I'll ask Ryan that same question, and then we'll come back to you. How's that?
I'll leave and come right back.
What are your thoughts on the greatest misconceptions out there?
I think the greatest misconceptions are that they view the drones as a toy. Because they think of a drone. The number one thing that we get when we show these drones or we're on site with a drone is like, wow, these things are huge. Like, we've never seen anything this big. And we talk drones and people that have drone experience are used to these, you know, tiny little DJI Mavics and things like that. And so they just don't know how to fly these heavy lift drones. It's a completely different animal. The controls are the same, everything's good, but it's almost like when you hand somebody that has a little bit of drone experience in that realm, you hand them these controllers and say, hey, go clean this building because you have some drone experience. You know, they have all the confidence to do it. And sometimes that leads to them crashing. Because the manufacturer's not telling them this is dangerous. You're tethered to a hose. It can snag on a sprinkler head, a bush, a shrub. Your helper could step on it, you know, whatever. And you got to move around trees, and the thing's 3 foot wide. And I mean, and you're not flying 400 foot above a building. You're in the boxing ring with the building. You're that close. You can reach out and grab it. Mm-hmm. And they have this confidence that they can just do whatever, and they forget about the hose, or they forget about this and that. And then the other thing is just having so much confidence in the drone that they'll stand really close to it when it takes off, or they don't rope off a big enough area to work in. I mean, I've seen these drones immediately arm and flip over, immediately arm and go left or right. And if you're there have been times early on when we were learning it where we were closer to it, and if we were standing 3 foot the other way, it would cut our leg off. I mean, like, you know, these things are not toys. So the biggest safety thing is just underestimating the power and what they are, is what I would say.
Gotcha. I think one of you, I've got some echoing coming back from sounds like some tapping or something going on. I'm not really sure there. Chris, what are your thoughts on the aspects of safety and misconceptions and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, these guys have had the experience and have seen things. I've seen a lot of things in my 2 years. I'm not going to name any manufacturers, but
Right.
these products are tools. They're commercial tools. And just like any heavy piece of machinery, think about construction. Like just transporting one of those large pieces of machinery can be dangerous. Some of those guys in that industry don't take it as such, and they lose their lives. They get seriously injured. This is no different. This is cutting edge technology that still hasn't really been deeply explored. It's still brand new, in my opinion. We're still in the infancy stage. We're learning how to crawl. And learn how to crawl, you're going to get up from time to time and think you can walk, and then you're going to fall right back down, man. And it happens in the blink of an eye, literally. In the blink of an eye, when these things go haywire, you may have a chance to bring it down if you're an experienced pilot, or with another experienced pilot. Ryan and I have had our share of experiences. I mean, I haven't had the pleasure of working with Brandon yet, but what he's told me, what other people have told me in the industry, it's just very terrifying. And the manufacturers just don't seem to understand that, or don't really display that they do. And that clear lack of understanding is blows my mind and makes me a little irritated, to say the least. But at the end of the day, these are tools that are mainly used and intended for commercial work, and need to be treated as so. They can cause severe damage to people. If it crashes into a building, it's really not going to cause a lot of damage. If it crashes into the ground, who cares? The drone can get repaired, but you can't. So there's a lot of up and downs of, they reduce liability. They're very safe. If a drone crashes on a site, honestly, it's not the end of a day, but depending on the environment and where you are and everything, and how you, like Ryan said, how you rope it off, and if you're trying to pursue work in urban environments, oh my gosh, there's so many more factors to consider. And even Ryan and I, as experienced as we are, with hundreds and maybe thousands of hours at this point, who knows? I'm still terrified to step foot in urban environments right now, just because there's so many factors, so much liability. The risk level goes up tremendously, and the payout it's the same. So a lot of these guys in these urban environments are taking really, really big risks, and they may realize it or not. But at the end of the day, safety is number one for all humans working on site, everyone walking around it, and only absolutely use the drone when you need to. There's no point in busting it out when you can get on a ladder maybe and spray it from the ground with your P60 or AR-60 or AR-45, whatever you got. There's no point in risking the aircraft or someone's life when you don't have to. If you need to get a lift for the job because it's a better tool, get a lift. If you need to hire a rappelling team to finish a hospital, get a rappelling team to finish the job or work with you. It's just another tool to use, and a lot of guys think it's a one-stop shop. So
that's actually a good segue into the next part of it, because that's what I see as well. Where, I mean, when you look at the drone, it is just that. It is nothing more than another tool that we have, and you have to look at all of the different tools and decide which one is better than the other. And I do like that you finish that out with, I mean, it is a safer option. It is, to certain things, but just like everything else, you have to watch. I know that I myself personally have been up in a lift and had a hydraulic hose rupture. Right now, I'm stuck up there. I got no place to go. I actually took my hose, I wrapped it around, and I slid down my hose to get down out off the lift, because I was going to be there, all day. It started early on in the job. So there are dangers with every single thing that we do within this industry. Probably more so than other industries, but nonetheless, these are just nothing more than vertical lift. They're tools to help get a job done, and they may not be good for everything. So as we look at that, we've kind of already said maybe, 100, 130 feet. So if we boiled that down and we said this is a good tool for 10 stories and below, 20 stories and below, 5 stories and below, what would you characterize that as, Chris?
Sorry, can you repeat what the question was?
Yeah, so boiling it down to height again, if you were to say the drones are more ideal for under a certain story limit, would we say 10 stories, 20 stories, 2 stories?
Oh.
Where would you say is the best this level and under?
So the best way I can give an analogy is the best thing to look at is vehicles. All right. So let's say you have a car, a sports car, you just got it. You think, oh, this thing I can drive as fast as I can everywhere I go. Let's top speed on the interstate all the time. Well, what's that going to do? That's going to wear out the engine faster. Everything's going to wear out faster. You're going to run out of gas. You're going to get a speeding ticket. You have a higher risk of dying or crashing, whatever it is, right? Same thing with the drones. The higher you go, the more dangerous situation you put it in, the more likely you are to have an accident or something is going to happen where you can't finish the job. You got to come back another day. So what I say is you cannot rush the bigger jobs the higher you go, because there are things that you will run into you didn't think about if you don't have any experience. And then you realize, holy cow, now I need to schedule an extra 3 days just to finish this one side or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, it's about just the crawl, walk, run aspect, where you crawl, start doing the small jobs, then you start walking, do the 8, 6, 7 story jobs, and then you start running, so to speak, and you start doing the higher jobs. And really, it's about the team that you can have in place, the plan, the communication with the clients, and knowing not only the drone capabilities but yours as a pilot is extremely important, because the more confident you get, the better you are going to be, the better you're going to be able to lead a team and all that stuff. So it's extremely important to have a flight plan in place for the bigger jobs and understand your capabilities and your team's capabilities. And if you're stretching yourself, just know maybe you need to take a step back and kind of analyze things differently, because when these things get rushed, bad things happen.
Brian, what are your thoughts on heights? The good average, in different 20 stories, 10 stories, 5 stories. What's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think so. If you look at statistics too, just bringing some things in, 90% of the build of commercial real estate in the country is about 10 stories and under. That's 90% of what we're going after. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that the drone's bread and butter is that 8, once you're comfortable with it, right? Once you're skilled and comfortable, it excels tremendously in that 8 to 10 story range. Yes, we can clean higher, but like Chris is saying, it takes a little longer. It's a lot more stressful, a lot more strenuous on your body, your mind, your everything, your crew, because it's just a high stress environment. But the bread and butter, to me, in my opinion, is in that 10 story range, 10 to 5 or 10 to 4, because I'm going to do the bottom 3 to 4 floors from the ground.
Right.
Because I'm not flying the thing, 30 foot off the ground, 20 foot off the ground to spray, because that actually gets even more dangerous than getting it in that middle ground, because, you have less room to adjust for errors. You have more hose you're dragging vertically so when you have your hose 100 foot in the air, your ground man can help wrangle that hose better because you got less hose on the ground.
Right.
So,
exactly.
He's just walking that end piece around, and there's less drag on the drone. When you're down lower, you're dragging a lot of hose. And then you don't want your ground man that close to the drone to help manage the hose, because he is now, if he's 6 foot tall, you're 30 foot up. Now he's 24 foot vertically away from the drone. If anything happens, that is no time to react. No time.
Great point. So let me go another direction too. I'll start with you again, Ryan. Flight time to proficiency, right? If we're talking about somebody goes out, they buy a drone, what's a realistic time to being proficient in being able to really do jobs and operate that drone, fly that drone, and be proficient with that drone safely?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the person, right? Their learning type, their intelligence level, their cause and effect, being able to understand cause and effect. But if you let's just say you get an average Joe that's decent at all of that, just average at all of it. I mean, I believe that it took me. Oh gosh, that's a good one. I mean, it took me the better part of 6 months to really be proficient with it.
Mhm.
We were okay, like a month in, month and a half in, but really 6 months on is where it really just started clicking. And you
Mhm.
just gotta, but it's almost like the you became one with the drone. Like your
Yeah, yeah.
fingers and your brain and the drone just all just, when you put it in your hand, it's like riding a bike, right? You know it, you
They
do
start
it,
to match. Yeah.
you do by feel. And that's why a lot of these guys, they're like, man, we're gonna go buy a drone. We're gonna, bid a job, buy a drone, and
Mhm.
go do it. And it's
Right.
like that just doesn't work. You need
Mhm.
time on sticks.
Right, right, right. Brandon, what are your thoughts on that? On becoming proficient with the stick and the drone and all of that?
Yeah, when it comes to all of those things, I think Ryan and I had touched on this when we were working on that last project down in Madison. This is a skilled trade. It's not. It's what I can compare it to is what I'm seeing a lot of is something similar to just the soft wash or pressure washing industry. Anybody that's got a pickup truck, a trailer, goes to Home Depot and buys a pressure washer, they start themselves up a business and they have no experience. No, they don't educate themselves. They're just going out and providing a service without understanding. And I'm starting to see that carry over into the drone world. And, I would say 6 months in this is just the beginning.
Mhm.
I think we've all kind of touched base on this where we're all in agreement that we're in the infancy stage of this industry. Like Chris said, we're we are going to be the ones teaching the new people coming in the capabilities and things like that of the drone. We can never take out the human factor, but I tell you what, when I got into it with Chris, the first thing I asked him was when I first started delving into this, I reached out to Chris right away, and he says, "Do you have any experience flying drones?" I'm like, "Yeah, I fly drones. I got a bunch of them, things like that." Man,
Different.
it's a skilled trade, and almost like an apprenticeship is what it should be. You can't go get your driver's license at 16, run out, rent a car, and drive across the country.
Mhm.
You have to show that you've been show a history of being responsible, and I think that's going to happen in this industry. To be honest,
Mhm.
uh, just getting a drone and flying it is it's just not a safe idea. Getting a drone to clean a ranch style house, if that's all you're buying it for, that's absolutely foolish. You can do that all off of a ladder and never even have to get on the roof.
Well, and to be clear here, so a couple things, because Brandon has mentioned the word ag several times, and I just want to make sure everybody out there knows it's agricultural. Agricultural. And then on the second side of that, when you sit there and you're talking about these 6 months to proficiency, we're not talking about we fly it 2 days this week and then
Yeah.
2 days 3 weeks later, and this is at a
Every
regular
day.
routine thing. So I'm going to go to Chris and I'm going to ask you that same question, Chris. What do you feel like is a proficient time to get to be proficient with flying a wash drone?
I think I froze again. Damn it.
That's all right. Go ahead. We'll listen
All
to
right.
you, and then you can come in and out.
Okay. Yeah, these guys have mentioned 6 months. I feel like 6 months is a great time frame to where you're just now starting to get comfortable with your abilities, knowing your equipment, knowing your limits, and then finding out the drone limits as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll keep saying it, knowing your confidence level and your limits personally as a pilot is so important,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to start looking at things differently. You're going to start looking at jobs differently. You're going to start looking at everything just different versus traditional, oh yeah, we could just get a lift and do it, blah, blah, no problem. But it's like, you could, but now you have to wait for it to get delivered and all this stuff. Anyways, at the end of the day, doing these commercial projects there's always something new that we learn. There's always something new that I pick up on and take a little tidbit from, and I can transfer that knowledge to the next job.
Mm-hmm.
And the next job could be a bigger job. And I learned how to get to that bigger job from doing that smaller job or that medium-sized job. And then I can call Ryan up and be like, hey man, you ever had this problem? Or call Brandon and it's like, hey man, on this project, I'd recommend doing this, because been there, done it, learned about it, and I can transfer this knowledge to these guys too, which is so good to have, just a network of guys that you can trust and rely on. And that's also, kind of what we're building too, is a network of guys that are experienced and knowledgeable and want to push this forward is also so tremendous to have in your phone or whatever. And just call someone up and ask them what they think. And if we can help, we can help. But by the end of the day, 6 months is a great time frame. You've learned everything. And I would say about a year is where you actually start truly getting into it. In my opinion, you start understanding pricing a little differently and margins and how to really tackle the big stuff and how to get it more often than not. And by that time, you've kind of situated yourself in a niche in your area, in my opinion, by that year mark.
So I think you would agree with me on this statement that, in virtually all industries, but let's, keeping it here in the wash industry, a lot of times, guys, you'll hear them say, well, I don't really want to talk with my competitors. I want to be, in my own lane. I want to do my own thing, that kind of thing. And when you're looking at the drone side of the wash industry, I think you all would agree with me that that's just really the wrong way to look at it. There's so many different variables here that aren't just about cleaning, where having a network to be able to reach out and talk to and discuss and that sort of thing would be a good thing to have. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Oh yeah, 100%. In the beginning, since I was one of the first people to ever buy one of these and get into it, I had no washing experience. I had very little drone experience. I had no idea what I was doing, to be honest. I had no clue. And I was confident in myself due to my previous experience in business and whatever. But at the end of the day, I had no idea what I was doing. At one point, I was mixing a light acid with bleach to clean buildings.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea. No one was there to tell me about the chemicals or any of that process or pricing. I was just winging it, man. And the drone was having problems and issues, and I was like, okay, well, we're gonna get through this because we have to. But it's so crucial to network with guys and have that open mind in this space. Even if you've been washing for 15, 20 years, I really don't care how long you've been washing. If you invented soft washing, it doesn't matter to me. The drone brings a totally new aspect to this entire game, and I've partnered with guys that have been in business that see that benefit. They've been in business 20-something years, and I've been able to teach them new things based on what I've just self-taught in the drone space. And they've been able to teach me things about cleaning that I never thought of. So it's really cool dynamic you can have when you bring an open mind to the table.
You bring up something unique, and I'm going to talk pricing here for a very brief moment, not pricing, how to price a job, that kind of a thing, but in the pricing realm of things, in the wash industry, a lot of times we'll see guys in any industry, again, it doesn't have to be the wash industry, but we'll see somebody, oh, that guy is a lowball hack and all that kind of stuff, but you're not looking at they're new and they have no idea how to price something, and so people don't necessarily want to help sometimes, and it's like, in my viewpoint has always been, well, let's help them to get that price up there to where it should be, because they just don't know what the price should be. So you're, putting your thumb to the wind and saying, yeah, that sounds like a good price to me, but I really don't know. So let me go with it. So, what are your thoughts on something like that, Brandon?
To kind of touch base on all that stuff, I'll just bring it back a little bit. Like the dome project that I just finished up with, when Ryan helped me on with like the Cajun Dome, that everybody's seen the footage of that. The misconception is the amount of effort and planning and time that goes into that before you actually do the job. With the big dome that I just recently did, we started talking about that back in May, I do believe. I think that's when I reached out to Chris and he talked to Ryan, Jordy. We've talked, and then we all started talking. But I tell you right now, that project never would have came to fruition and never would have been completed without collaboration with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not willing to do that, you should just get rid of the drone. Quite honestly, if you're not willing to ask for help, you're going to get yourself in a situation where you're going to hurt yourself, the industry as a whole, things like that. With large scale projects, the more eyes you get on it, the better. Collaboration is a huge, huge factor with this business, in the growth of it. From the very start, you have to understand that this is a new industry.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, your thoughts? Can you hear me, Ryan?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
I can't hear you.
That's all right. So your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I can't hear.
You must have muted.
Ryan.
We'll let him get rolling back in. A couple more questions, guys, and then we'll get out of here because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But let's start off with thoughts on overspray and mitigating overspray. One of the questions that so there was a demo done by both Apelix, and it was also done by Lucid. Lucid and Apelix did a demo down in Arizona, and one of the comments was about the overspray. And so I want to get your thoughts on mitigating overspray. But before I do that, I also want to say my response to that has been, have you ever sprayed from a lift? Because even from a lift, you're going to have overspray going everywhere. And if the closer you are to the building, the better in some instances, the type of equipment, all of that. But Ryan, let's start with you as far as what do you think you can do to help mitigate overspray or issues with overspray?
Well, the biggest thing is just knowing the wind direction and then knowing the angle in which you shoot the building.
Mm-hmm.
If you're shooting straight on to the building and the wind's blowing from left to right or right to left, you're going to carry more of it in the direction of the wind. I
Mm-hmm.
believe, like if you have a corner of a building, right, where you come to the corner, you spray into that corner, like the corner's facing you. You spray into that, pushing it down the sides of the building instead of spraying the edge of the building and it rolling 45 feet off the sides, swirling around, hitting all the grass and shrubs and plants. I think angles make a big difference with it. You're never going to get rid of it completely, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, like you said, lifts, ropes, anything, the particle, the matter has to come down. And the higher you go, the longer it floats, you know? So the biggest thing is just plant management, having a ground guy. Same thing. It's the same thing for residential or doing it from the ground, except we're flying in the air. And just keeping those plants wet during flight, before flight, during flight, after flight is the key to cut down on some of the killing or some of the drying that goes on with this chemical. Because at the end of the day, the drone is just a flying gun.
Exactly.
So you treat it the same.
So plant and property protection is still an absolute must, regardless of
change.
anything else.
Yeah, it doesn't change.
Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Overspray is a tricky one. Angles and wind and different tips you have depending on your equipment is takes time to learn and understand. Corners are the most dangerous part of any building. I don't care what anybody says when you have a drone, because now you have more turbulent air coming in. You bring in more air with a drone pushing downwards. it can start creating a cyclone effect if you don't know what to look for. It can be very dangerous. That creates more overspray with a drone, being a drone. It's got more air you bring into the equation. So the only thing you can really do is just know your wind, have just a good flight plan, block off those areas, do a water test at the height you're spraying first so you see where it's being carried to. If you can predict it, have someone block off that area or keeping it wet. Or you just fly closer. But also flying closer brings in more of a risk of you're getting closer to the building now and it could be a little more turbulent closer, all that kind of stuff. So really the best thing I found is to fly a little closer when the wind picks up, but that also takes time and experience to get to that point.
Brandon, you have any thoughts to add on the overspray aspects of it?
No, they touch base on all that stuff, and it's I have the same feelings on that. You're never going to mitigate or eliminate the overspray. Not only corners, but if you get into an urban environment where you got a bunch of buildings somewhat close together, the wind bouncing off of stuff, it just creates a whole bunch of more issues. Inside corners are the most dangerous area to clean. I've had some experience in both of those and a few of those, and it's kind of scary watching a drone, 60, 80 feet in the air bouncing around because it can't grab air. And then when you're trying to spray water, things like that, that's the thing too. These drones are water resistant. They're not waterproof. And when you start throwing prop wash in there, you're creating issues. You're adding a potential safety risk when you start spraying water. So yeah, mitigate all that stuff. Even before you fly your cleaning drone, I have multiple times taken my DJI Mavic and put it up there just to see what the wind is doing. Even at 3-4 stories, the winds can be different and you do not know what it's doing. What's nice with the DJIs is if it's windy, it's got an alarm on there and it's going to tell you. And I've had it where there's little to no wind on the ground, but I put my Mavic 2 up in an inside corner, and the thing, I couldn't control it. Well, I'm not going to put my big drone into that position either.
Right.
So, that is right back to what I said last time about all this stuff. You have to put in the effort and prep time to understand what you're doing. That it takes months of preparation to do big jobs. I don't think it's I don't think it's an unrealistic expectation to spend a good couple of days planning even a mid-sized job project. So do yourself due diligence.
So 2 more questions for y'all. The first one is on this is something I don't think is a realistic expectation of the drones, and it gets us back to what you should do, shouldn't do, could do, couldn't do, all those kinds of things. So I'd like some final parting thoughts on what you should do, shouldn't do, could do, couldn't do on drones, but going specifically to a question of doing rain gutter blowouts. Okay, I've heard, oh yeah, well, you could blow out rain gutters with it and all that sort of thing, and I just don't see that other than maybe on a commercial flat roof. And so Brandon had mentioned prop wash, and prop wash, for those that don't know, is the air movement that's going and blowing. So could you use that prop wash for rain gutter blowout? I don't believe so, but what are you guys' thoughts, and any other thoughts that you have on what you shouldn't do with your drone? Brandon?
Yeah, like I said before, I'll go back to it again. If you're planning on buying a drone to use for residential cleaning, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't waste the money. If you find a big project, there's plenty of people with experience out there that, you could have us come and clean it. But I'll tell you what, that's not something I would try. There's enough other tools on the market for gutter cleaning. But to utilize a drone for gutter cleaning, is it possible? Sure. Is it efficient? Probably not as efficient and cost effective as just doing it the old fashioned way.
Mm-hmm. So Ryan, your thoughts, and I'm gonna change that question slightly to say, let's say it's a 5-story, commercial roof kind of a thing.
Yeah, no, I mean the danger is the cameras on these drones aren't sophisticated enough, like for now, like
Exactly.
the DJI, where you can turn it while you're flying. So one, there's a vision issue of it, and two, the risk to get that close, to get that right angle to do it is not worth the reward, right? Just like we've talked in here, it's like it's versus reward is what we look at, especially in doing it for a long time now. It's like when we first started, we were doing a little more risky things because we were just trying to figure out the tech. Well, as we figured out, it's not worth doing a gutter blowout with a drone or whatever. The drone, I believe, is built for building washing, specifically more chemical soft wash building washing, because all these manufacturers are harping on pressure right now, and all of them are.
Pressure is good for rinsing, but not really
Yeah,
for cleaning.
right. You can't, because I've had clients ask, well, hey, can you pressure wash only the building with the drone? It's like, I mean, I could, but I'll be here for a year because yes, I can fly the drone precisely because we've been doing it for a while. So can Chris, so can Brandon. But the problem is you've got air moving it. Your lines won't be as straight. You have to get super close with a fan tip, and it's just not a practical use case for the drone. The drone is a soft wash applicator, and then you can use pressure to rinse off, and that's kind of it. I mean, it's a soft wash extension or a downstream extension. And as far as the don't do's also is just the biggest thing is just if you wouldn't do it in a lift or couldn't do it in a lift, sometimes you don't need to do it with a drone. The trees in the way, all these exponential factors for hose hangs and all this stuff. So
hose management.
yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, the hose management is the most important thing on the drone, besides the drone pilot being able to fly the drone. Because if you're flying through there and you get snatched down all of a sudden, it don't matter how good the pilot is, it's gonna. I mean, gravity wins, right?
Exactly. So, Chris, I'm going to go back to you, and then I'll get you with the final question that I've got for you. And again, looking at some of the capabilities or things that the drone shouldn't do, what are your parting thoughts on that?
So, yeah, these guys made some good points, and I love that Ryan mentioned risk versus reward.
Absolutely.
That's it. I mean, in a nutshell, right? Like, we're not reinventing the entire way we wash. And the best way I explain to people when they walk up and they're like, "Oh my God, is that a drone?" It's like, "What do you think?" No, but really, it's just a flying soft wash gun. Is the best way to describe it, right? Take away everything else. What's at the core of it? It's just a fitting going into a unloader basically, and out a nozzle and into a tip. Simple. Now we're just adding some props and making it all fancy and expensive. And it's just another tool. That's all it is. Like, honestly, I've gotten into the idea of lifts more recently on jobs just because the way I'm looking at it is like, I don't want to pull the drone out. It's not going to do a great job. I'm going to waste my time. It's going to be too windy. It's too big, too complex of an operation to use a drone in this case. And actually, a couple recent big jobs, we've gotten a lift, and we found a way to complement the drone with the lift, as a matter of fact. So
using both tools.
Yeah, we use both tools. We use all the tools we can because that's the best way to get it done. And it worked out really well because we applied with a drone. The lift team came behind us and rinsed the heck out of everything, and they used a little bit more pressure. and it was great for everybody. You know, we had a team doing one thing, another team doing one thing, and a couple ground guys. So we had a big effort, but you know, we found a plan that worked and utilized the drone for what it was meant for, which was, like Ryan said, just applying. Just get the chemical on there, let it sit, move on. And the drone did an excellent job of doing that at a very fast rate. But when you start adding a bunch of windows, then you got to rinse the heck out of the windows. You got to get close. You got to just flood them with water. So it just kind of takes time to learn the do's and don'ts of what someone's company might prefer doing versus your capabilities. You know, I would say it's definitely not intended for residential, like by any means. The only residential jobs it makes sense on are tall slate roofs, stuff you just shouldn't walk on, big tile roofs, stuff that's just really high off the ground. And those are bigger jobs typically. And if you know someone in your area that has a drone, I would just highly recommend subbing them out versus going and buying a drone for a job. And then now you have this tool that you only use for certain jobs here and there. It doesn't make any sense. You're not going to get a good ROI. You're going to feel like the drone should just automatically get you more jobs.
Mm-hmm. So what about the he popped off right there. I accidentally, there he is.
Oh.
You back there, Chris?
You hear me?
Go ahead, Chris.
Did you hear what I said?
Yeah, I think we heard most of what you said. Yeah, just that very last second you dropped out. But yeah. So okay, I said two more, and I got one more before I get to the final question, because somebody had asked me to ask this, and I forgot to ask it, and that is, any thoughts or issues with the hose dragging across surfaces such as roofs and that sort of thing? And I'll go to start Brandon or Chris, whichever. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, so can you guys hear me, right?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, just my video isn't showing up. All right. Yeah, definitely the way I have my hoses set up are not traditional. Everything is reversed. So those fittings tend to get caught, even on the smallest cracks in concrete, small little tree branches, just small little things on the ground. It can get caught pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
So you just got to be kind of careful of your flight plan, how much hose you have, and all that stuff. And knowing what hose the drone's actually going to carry up versus what's going to stay on the ground. So small little planning details like that make a big world of difference, especially when you're going up and over things and you don't know what's up there. So you want to be very mindful of fittings hitting windows or just other delicate areas.
Gotcha. Brandon, your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, hose management is just as important as battery management, if not more important. It depends, but hose management is very important. I've had the same situations where yes, the hose can drag across certain surfaces, but you have to do the prep work to understand and look for what could potentially happen there. You know, snag hazards, hook hazards, things like that. The other issue is like, if you're dragging your hose across a sloped roof, one of the issues that I say that people aren't really ready for is if that hose starts coming down, if you're 150 feet in the air and that hose starts coming down, you got 150 feet of hose with water in it. And you're looking at, you know, you're going to watch that drone go and do a bunch of acrobatic things that you don't want to see it be doing.
Right.
And you'll have to change your Huggies after that. So, you know, one thing I'll say that really to touch base on that I don't think is it needs to be put out there. This industry, people need to be willing to walk away from jobs.
Mm-hmm.
If, you know, that big project we worked on, we walked away from it and then came back to it. So that big dome I did with Ryan, I walked away from it. I told him, I says, there's no way we're going to be able to do it. And then we came back to it and we're like, hey, what if we do this? So, we were willing to walk away from jobs.
Mhm.
And the drone is not a do-all tool. It's not a do-all, end-all. It's a tool. It doesn't do everything.
Right.
And learning the limitations and being willing to walk away is something that needs to be imprinted in people's minds that do venture down this path.
All right. So before my last question, Ryan, your thoughts on hose management?
Yeah. Echoing what they said. Also, another thing that plays a big role is what your hose is made out of, the coating on the outside. The Flexzillas seem to slide a little easier when you're going over edges, metal edges, things like that. The ag hose style seems to hang a little more. The other thing is when you're venturing into these bigger projects and you're doing roofs on them, and you have to be very cognizant of like vents up there, because what do if you're flying along, you can't see the vent, you get hung. You have to you're always looking forward, but trying to if you get in trouble, be able to re-engineer what you just did, go backwards.
Mhm.
And so you're just always looking at what's coming up and trying to avoid it. But if you get hung, because I've been hung in situations, and it's like we got 6 minutes of the drone just dies and we're hung. What do we do? Well, you typically try to, if you were going one way, and this is where flight planning comes in, you're planning to go this way and it gets hung. Well, if you pick up a little, go forward, and go back the way you came, you're typically going to unhang yourself.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, hose management, knowing your plan, knowing your path. And if you do get hung, the other thing is a lot of guys with the drones panic. When something happens, they panic. The
Mhm.
best thing to do is keep calm. I mean, like the perfect scenario is with Chris and I. We were doing a project in Jackson, Mississippi. We were 185 feet in the air, and the drone started toilet bowling 20 foot. And Chris is trying to grab the hose, get it back, and I almost just blacked out, went into pilot mode. I didn't panic. I didn't, when we got on the ground, it's like I wanted to fall over because I had almost had an anxiety attack. We're 185 foot in the air. We had 4 lanes of traffic on the right, 15, 16-story hospital in front of us, TPO roof we're standing on. So me, one of my guys, and Chris were on that roof. So my job as a pilot was, where can I crash it if I have to crash it? How do I keep these guys safe? And how do I not run into traffic or the building? And having a good flight plan, good emergency plans, and being calm, because it's not a matter of if you're going to crash the drone. It's just a matter of when. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter. I mean, like, man, Chris, me, Brandon. I mean,
Yep. Yep.
we've got so many crash stories we could tell you about, and some,
Let's skip that part.
Yeah.
yeah, right. And that's the other thing with the confidence. Going back to touching back on some of that stuff is they think just because they fly a camera drone, they never have any issue with it because they're flying it away from everything. They're like, because I was kind of under that impression when I first got. I was like, I'm not gonna crash this thing. I'm gonna be careful with it. Oh, come on, man. Like, I've wrecked a few. And it's just part of that learning curve. So that's why safety is huge. Hose management's huge. Flight plans are huge because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Mhm.
And
This is,
before, I just want to touch on that too,
yeah, go
Doug.
for it.
Like Ryan and I were doing a really big hospital. There were obstructions up top. We didn't even know about till the last day, right? It was like,
Yeah.
oh, cool. There was some RF antennas right there, literally.
Yeah.
We thought
Hidden.
caused the issue, but that didn't. It was a drone thing, but it's fixed now. Anyways, I was managing the hose for once. I was so happy. I was like, I'm not on the 6. Cool. But at that height, 180 feet, Ryan is just focused literally on the drone. That's it. That's extremely important to have a good VO. And we had another guy just off to the side giving commands to our ground guy via radio. So there was really just 2 of us experienced guys up there, and old Mikey, up there on the radio. Anything goes wrong, we need an extra hand. He was there for batteries and communication. So when that thing started going all crazy, I started noticing the movement before Ryan did.
Yeah.
And I was just simply trying to guide him in. I was like, closer, forward, up, left, whatever, small movements. And he was responding. So we were getting to the target. And then all of a sudden I start noticing it's starting to kind of go in circles. And I'm like, oh crap. So I yelled to our ground guy, machine off. And Ryan's thinking, what? We're good, right? The next thing we know, I can't even grab the hose anymore because it's going 10 feet this way and 10 feet that way. And it's
In
like
the blink
hitting
of
me in
an
the
eye,
face.
like literally in
And
the blink of an eye.
So, but the important takeaway from that is I noticed before Ryan did, because he was so focused on every little thing, and I'm focused right on him and what the drone's doing. And I was able to relay that information to Mikey, because like when he said he blacks out, you can't fathom a thought. You can't generate a sentence. You can't even talk. You're just so dialed in to that drone, and safety of others was his main concern, because that was a very hostile environment. And if one thing, it just, something could have happened, but thankfully Ryan was calm and collective. I was over there shouting and trying to get him, a good direction. And then I eventually stopped, and we just kind of had to back out. But we got it down safely, and that's all that matters. But just having a good VO with a hose management and a good team and a good strategy, not only for the flight, but the entire job, is just, I can't stress that enough. So important.
So just real quick, VO is visual observer. All right. So I'm going to, as I ask the final question, answer the final question, but feel free to throw in anything else that you want to add or whatever, and we can always do another segment later. But Chris, I'll go ahead and start with you. So my final question for you guys is, tell me a little bit about your company, how to get in touch with you, and where you're willing to go to do jobs. Chris?
So we're based in Atlanta Drone Cleaning, but based here, we travel the Southeast, much like Ryan and, Brandon, I know, are willing to travel as well, collaborate on big projects when possible is always a lot of fun, but also really important. We have enough equipment to do so. I've got multiple drones. They're not with me right now, but multiple rigs, going to have multiple trucks and stuff next year. So we're growing at a very rapid pace and can cover a large distance. We subcontract a lot, so the next vehicles we have are not going to be wrapped to just come and serve people. And at the end of the day, the only important thing is to get that job done safely and on schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So typically people can email me or go to our website or text me, call me. I'm usually pretty flexible and willing to help out when it makes sense.
What's your web address?
www.atlantadronecleaning.com.
Awesome. Ryan?
Yeah. So very similar to Chris. We were cleaning company for a drone company, adapted them in, and have been on this wonderful, wild, crazy journey. Chris and I connected early on. Talking about the network deal, really good, because we bounce things off each other a lot. He was on his own. I entered into the picture a little bit later with him, and we've been thick as thieves ever since. But it's good to have that network and those people to bounce things off of. I mean, it's really important. But we're based in Mississippi. We literally travel the United States. I mean, we focus on the Southeast because that's where most of what we do is it grows, like wildfire. But we do travel the country. We've cleaned from California to Seattle to New Jersey, anywhere in between. The joke is Nome, Alaska, if the money's right. So they can find us on LinkedIn is a huge thing we use. LinkedIn, our website, GodwinCleaningservices.com, GODWIN cleaningservices.com. We're not as active on Facebook just because we're more in the industrial marketplace. So LinkedIn, website, on the website you can find our email. That's the best thing to do because we're really busy. We're a small team. We're super busy, super inundated. We're growing constantly. We've got some big plans for 2024. And yeah, that's how you can get hold of us.
Brandon, how about you?
Yeah, you can reach me in a couple different ways. SuperiorSoftWashSystems.com. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as ElevatedDroneCleaning.com. Same thing. But I'm based out of the Midwest, Central Wisconsin, North Central Wisconsin. But again, I'm willing to travel anywhere. I can be bought. But that's the nice thing with this is the collaboration to do these big projects it's a lot of fun. So it can be very stressful, but it's a lot of fun once everything comes together. But yeah, I mean, being able to collaborate and work together, just from a safety aspect, getting more eyes on things.
So if you are
especially with these urban environments that we're dealing with. So, yeah, don't be scared to reach out. And
I think he keeps freezing up on this.
Sorry, what was that?
No, you were froze up on us there for a second. I thought you stopped talking, but you had froze for a second. But go ahead and finish up.
Oh yeah, yeah. Don't be scared to reach out and get a hold of one of us. Yeah, I just know that the people that collaborate with one another, you're only gonna benefit from it. So don't be scared to call us.
Sounds perfect. Guys, hang out with me for a second as we end the recording here. But one thing I do want to throw out there for everybody is that I don't think that there is a job that is too big. And the reason that I'm going to say that is these three guys and others will collaborate together. They'll bring all of their forces and troops to your location and do whatever needs to be done. So feel free to reach out to the Spray Wash Academy, to any one of these gentlemen here, and any big jobs that you have, small jobs, medium jobs, whatever. I think if they can't get it done, we can help find somebody to get that job done for you. And again, size doesn't matter. All these guys will collaborate and build together. So hang out with me for a few minutes, guys, but definitely appreciate your time. And we can even look at doing more later down the road, but really appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.